Sometimes the truth doesn't break your heart all at once. It peels away slowly, one painful layer at a time, until you realize the life you've been living wasn't yours at all. I used to think betrayal meant cheating, but I learned there's something worse. Being erased from your own story without even knowing it. My name is Kate. I'm 40 years old. For most of my adult life, I believed I had everything a woman could ask for. A loving husband, a beautiful home in the suburbs, a steady career, and a quiet sense of peace that made every morning feel predictable, safe. I didn't know that safety was just the calm before the storm. The silence before my entire world shattered into something unrecognizable. I met Michael when I was 25. I remember the first night we talked. It was at a friend's birthday party in downtown Chicago. He had that kind of easy charm that made people feel seen. The way he spoke, the way he laughed, it was magnetic. I was shy, unsure of myself back then, still recovering from a messy breakup. But when Michael looked at me, I felt like I could breathe again. He worked in finance, always dressed sharply, spoke confidently, and seemed to have his life together. He listened to my stories like they mattered. Like every word I said built a bridge between us. Within 6 months he was telling me he loved me. Within a year we were married. The early years were blissful, or at least they felt that way. We bought a modest home, went on vacations, talked about kids but never had them. He said he wanted to wait until the time was right. I agreed. I trusted him completely. Looking back now, there were signs. Small, almost invisible cracks in the perfection I had painted for myself. The way he would disappear for weekends under excuse of business trips. The late-night phone calls he'd step outside to take. The new colognes I hadn't bought him. The occasional faint scent of baby powder or fruit shampoo on his clothes. Things that didn't belong to me. But love makes you blind in the most elegant way. It doesn't cover your eyes. It wraps you in a story you want to believe. And I believed mine. It was a Sunday morning when my world started to unravel. I remember it because I was baking banana bread, something Michael always loved. He'd gone out early, saying he had to meet a client. I was scrolling through my phone when a message notification popped up. But it wasn't mine. It was his. He'd left his phone charging on the counter. Normally, I respected his privacy. We trusted each other, at least I thought we did. But that morning a strange instinct, maybe divine, maybe something darker, told me to look. The message preview read, "The kids can't wait to see you tonight, Red Heart." My heart froze. I stared at the screen, unsure if I'd read it right. Kids. We didn't have kids. I hesitated for a long moment, the oven beeping behind me, the smell of banana bread filling the air like a cruel joke. Finally, I unlocked his phone. The message was from a woman named Laura. I didn't recognize the number. I scrolled up, the messages went back months. Photos, videos, little snippets of a life that had nothing to do with me. Pictures of Michael, my husband, holding 2 small children. A girl and a boy. The little girl looked around for the boy, maybe 6. They had his eyes. The same deep brown I used to get lost in. There were texts like, "Dinner was perfect. Love you, and don't forget Jake's soccer game tomorrow." I remember the exact moment my world cracked. It wasn't when I saw the words "I love you." It was when I saw a photo of Michael, smiling with those kids in a park I knew well, Lincoln Park. 10 minutes from our house. 10 minutes. My body felt cold, numb, like I was watching someone else's tragedy unfold. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I backed away from the counter, from the oven, from everything. My knees gave out and I sat on the kitchen floor, clutching that phone like it was the last piece of him I could hold. He had another family, another life, another version of himself that I didn't even exist in. I stayed there for what felt like hours. The oven timer beeped endlessly. When I finally moved, I wasn't crying, not yet. I was hollow, like all emotion had been drained out of me. When Michael came home that evening, I was sitting at the table, his phone in front of me. The banana bread sat untouched between us, the air thick with silence. He walked in smiling, loosening his tie. "Hey babe. Smells amazing." I cut him off. "Who is Laura?" His smile vanished. He froze mid-step. For a second I could see his brain trying to catch up, trying to decide whether to lie, to run, to confess. He didn't answer. He just stared at the phone, then at me. And in that silence I had my answer. "Don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't tell me she's a client or a friend." I've seen the pictures. I've seen the kids. He sat down slowly, his face pale, his hands trembling. Kate, please, I can explain. Explain what? I snapped. That you have another family? That you've been living two lives while I've been baking banana bread and waiting for you to come home. His lips parted but no sound came out. Finally he whispered, "It's not what you think." I laughed, that kind of bitter broken laugh that doesn't sound human. "It's exactly what I think." For a long time he said nothing. Then finally he spoke. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I stared at him in disbelief. "You didn't mean to have another wife and kids?" He flinched. "She's not my wife." I slammed my hand on the table. "Don't play games with me, Michael." He buried his face in his hands, his voice muffled. "It started before we were married. She got pregnant. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave her, but I couldn't lose you either." His words hit me like a wave of acid. Before we were married. That meant the whole foundation of our life, our vows, our promises, had been a lie. "How long?" I whispered. He looked up, tears in his eyes. 14 years. I couldn't breathe. 14 years. That was our entire marriage. He hadn't just cheated, he'd built another world within ours. The rest of that night was a blur. I remember shouting, crying, breaking things. He tried to touch me, to calm me, and I pushed him away so hard he stumbled into the wall. I remember saying things I didn't even know I was capable of saying. And I remember the moment he left. Not with anger but with shame. He didn't even fight for me. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every memory of our life replaying like a cruel film. The anniversaries, the vacations, the nights he said, "I love you." All of it poison now. Every touch felt like a lie. Every word tasted like betrayal. The next morning I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to move. Somehow I ended up near Lincoln Park. My hands shook as I parked and got out. I followed the same walking path I'd seen in those photos. And then I saw them. Laura. She was standing by a bench holding a coffee cup, her hair tied up in a messy bun. Beside her were the kids, Michael's kids. They were laughing, playing, chasing pigeons. I stood there frozen, hidden behind a tree, watching the life that had stolen mine. Laura looked normal. Kind. She didn't look like the villain of my story. She looked like someone who believed in love too. Then to my horror I saw Michael's car pull up. He got out smiling, that same smile he used to give me. He kissed Laura's cheek, lifted his daughter, ruffled his son's hair. And I broke. Not the kind of breaking that comes with noise, but the quiet kind where your body still stands but your soul crumbles inside you. I turned and walked away before they could see me. My vision blurred, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my footsteps. When I reached the car, I collapsed against the steering wheel and finally let myself sob. For hours. That was the day I realized I didn't just lose my husband. I lost the story of who I thought I was. That night, I packed a bag and left home. Not because I was ready to move on, but because staying felt like dying slowly. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't live in that lie anymore. As I drove away, the city lights blurred through my tears. My phone buzzed with his calls, his messages, "Please, Kate. I'm sorry. Please come home." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because sometimes silence is the only language a broken heart can speak. And that was just the beginning of my unraveling. I didn't go far that first night. I drove until the sun started rising, the sky bleeding pink and gold over the city skyline. My mind was a blur of images, Michael's face, those children's laughter, the sound of my heart breaking in my chest. Eventually, I pulled into a small roadside motel an hour outside of town. The kind of place that smelled like coffee and dust where no one asked questions. For 3 days I stayed there. Not eating much, barely sleeping, just trying to make sense of the impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that little girl's face. Those same brown eyes I once thought were only mine to love. The betrayal didn't just sit in my heart. It lived in my bones. Michael called over 50 times. Texted me. Emailed. "Please talk to me. I'll explain everything. I love you." The words that once comforted me now felt poisonous. I couldn't bring myself to reply. But silence has a way of breeding its own kind of torment. The longer I stayed quiet, the more my mind filled in the blanks. On the 4th day, I decided I needed to know everything. Not from him. From her. I didn't have much to go on except a name Laura, and the phone number from those text messages. So I did what any broken, desperate woman would do. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was soft, unsure. Hello. I froze. My heart pounded in my ears. Then I said, Hi, is this Laura? Yes, who's this? I hesitated, my throat tightening. My name is Kate. I'm Michael Walker's wife. There was silence, long, heavy, suffocating. Then quietly, I think you have the wrong number. No, I said, my voice cracking. I don't. Another pause. And then a sigh. Oh my God. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. You knew about me, didn't you? No, she whispered. No, I didn't. Not until last year. Her voice trembled and suddenly she sounded just like me. Another woman caught in a web she never asked for. Can we meet? I asked. She hesitated. Why? Because I need to look in the eyes of the woman who lived my life while I was still in it. We agreed to meet the next day at a small cafe near the park, the same one from the photos. I don't know how I got through that night. I felt sick, hollow, terrified of what I might find. But the truth, once it begins to unravel, doesn't stop. It drags you with it until there's nothing left to hide behind. When I arrived, she was already there. She was sitting by the window, nursing a cup of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. She looked younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with light brown hair and kind eyes. She looked up as I entered, and for a second, I saw fear flash across her face. Laura? I asked. She nodded slowly. Kate. We sat across from each other, two strangers bound by the same man. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick with shared pain. Finally, I broke it. How long? She looked down at her hands. We met 15 years ago. I didn't know he was married. He told me he was divorced. My chest tightened. 15 years. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. We had our first son a year later. I thought he was just working a lot. He said he traveled for business. Sometimes he'd be gone for a few days, sometimes a week. I had no reason to doubt him. And when did you find out about me? I asked. She swallowed hard. Last year. He left his wallet at home one night. There was a photo inside of you. I confronted him. He admitted everything. My breath caught. And you stayed. She looked up, guilt flickering in her eyes. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to leave, but I had the kids. He promised he'd end it with you. He said your marriage was over, that you were sick and he didn't want to hurt you. My heart clenched. He said I was sick? She nodded. He told me you had anxiety, that you couldn't handle being alone. That's why he hadn't told you yet. I laughed bitterly. So he made me the villain. She wiped her eyes. I'm so sorry, Kate. I didn't mean to be part of this. I believed her. Not because I wanted to, but because I saw my own confusion mirrored in her face. She wasn't my enemy. She was another victim of his lies. Do your kids know? I asked softly. She shook her head. No. They think he just works late sometimes. I couldn't destroy their world. I stared out the window, watching cars pass by. People living their ordinary, unbroken lives. He destroyed ours. We sat there for over an hour, sharing fragments of our stories, piecing together the double life he had built so meticulously. I learned that he'd spent holidays alternating between us. Christmas with her one year, Thanksgiving with me. Sometimes when he said he had late meetings, he was tucking his kids into bed. I learned that he'd used 2 separate credit cards, 2 phones, even 2 email addresses. He told her his parents were dead. They weren't. He told me he never wanted kids, he had to. Every new detail felt like a stab to the chest. Before we parted ways, I asked her one last question. Do you still love him? She looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, I don't know. I think I love the man I thought he was. But the man he really is? I don't even recognize him. I nodded slowly. Yeah, me too. When I left the cafe, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at nothing. For the first time, I wasn't just angry, I was grieving. Not for the marriage I lost, but for the illusion I'd been living in. I thought of all the birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet nights I'd spent thinking I was loved. They weren't real. None of it was real. Later that night, I finally called him. My voice was calm, colder than I expected. "We need to talk," I said. He sounded relieved. "Kate, thank God. Please, Save it," I interrupted. "Tomorrow. 6 p.m. Our house." He hesitated. "Okay." When he arrived the next evening, he looked exhausted, like the lies were finally weighing him down. He tried to touch my hand, but I pulled away. "I met her," I said flatly. His face drained of color. "You what?" "I met Laura. I know everything." He sat down heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Kate, I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "Over and over again. For 14 years you looked me in the eyes and lied. Do you even know who you are anymore?" He stared at the floor. "I love you both." Those words hit me like a slap. "You don't get to say that," I whispered. "You don't get to love two people and destroy both of them." He looked up, his eyes red. "I tried to keep both lives separate. I thought I could make it work." "Work?" I repeated bitterly. "Like scheduling meetings? Balancing a checkbook?" "You were balancing families, Michael. Real people. Real hearts." Tears filled his eyes. "I know. I messed up. But please, Kate, don't leave me. We can fix this." I shook my head slowly. "No, Michael. You can't fix something that never existed." He reached for me again, but I stood. "You need to leave. Now." For a long moment he didn't move. Then finally he stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "I never stopped loving you." I met his gaze. "You stopped loving me the moment you started lying." When the door closed, I broke. I fell to my knees, sobbing into my hands, my entire body shaking. The silence in that house was unbearable. It echoed with ghosts, ghosts of laughter, of love, of promises that never meant anything. In the days that followed, I filed for divorce. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it was also the only way to save what was left of me. I blocked his number, changed my locks, deleted every photo of us. Still, some nights I'd wake up at 2 a.m. reaching for him, only to find the empty space beside me. Old habits die slower than love. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail from Laura. It wasn't long. Just a note that said, "He moved out. I thought you should know. You were right, the truth set us free. Even if it broke us first." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my drawer. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm. Not happiness, not peace, but a quiet kind of strength, the kind that comes after you've survived the unthinkable. But the story didn't end there. Because a month later, I found out something that changed everything again. A twist I never saw coming. And it made me realize that Michael's lies went deeper than I could have ever imagined. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was slicing through the blinds like little golden knives, cutting across my face. My head throbbed, my throat was dry, and for a moment I forgot where I was. Then the silence hit me. That heavy, hollow silence that follows destruction. The kind of silence that settles after everything collapses, and there's nothing left to scream about. I was in my bedroom, the same room where Ethan used to whisper love against my skin, the same room where I once believed I was safe. But now the walls felt like strangers, holding too many ghosts. I walked to the window, still wearing the robe I'd been in for 2 days. Outside, kids were laughing on the street. A man was mowing his lawn. Life was happening as if the world hadn't just ended. I watched for a long moment, realizing something cruel. The world doesn't stop when your heart breaks. Just keeps spinning, indifferent. I wanted to hate it for that. My phone was buzzing endlessly, messages, missed calls. From my mother, my best friend, coworkers. I hadn't answered anyone. What could I even say? Hi, my husband had a secret family for years and I was too blind to see it? No. Some wounds are too raw for words. Then I saw one message that froze me. Kate, please. Let's talk. For the kids. Ethan. The kids. Not our kids. The kids. My chest tightened. I felt that strange mix of love and disgust again. The war inside me between wanting to scream and wanting to understand. Picked up my keys. I didn't know why, but I needed to see him, to see the man who had torn me apart with his lies. When I arrived at the park where we used to go for walks, he was already there, sitting on a bench under the oak tree. He looked older, tired, like a man who'd been running for too long and finally realized there was nowhere left to go. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled, his hands shaking. For a second I saw the Ethan I fell in love with, gentle, nervous, kind. Then the memory shattered, and I saw him for what he was. A stranger in my husband's body. He stood up as I approached, his lips trembling. Kate, don't. I cut him off. My voice cracked but held firm. Don't say my name like you still have the right to. He swallowed hard, tears forming. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I love you. Love. I snapped. You don't love people and lie to them for years. You don't build two lives and call that love, Ethan. You build houses of pain. He looked down, ashamed. I didn't plan any of this. When I met her, it was before you and... Stop. My voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want to hear your justifications. You had choices. You could have told me. You could have walked away before we built a life together. But you didn't. You watched me make plans for a future that didn't even exist. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing. For a brief second, a part of me, that foolish, fragile part, wanted to comfort him. That's the cruel thing about love. It doesn't die cleanly. It lingers in the corners, begging for another chance. But then I remembered the pictures, him holding another woman, children calling him daddy, and that feeling evaporated like morning mist. Do they know? I asked coldly. He looked up, confused. Your other family, I clarified. Do they know about me? His silence was my answer. I nodded slowly. So I was the lie. Not them. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. You know, Ethan, I used to pray for a love that felt like home. Turns out I got one, but it wasn't a home. It was a hiding place. I turned to leave, but he reached out, grabbing my hand. I froze. Please, he whispered. Don't destroy me. Don't ruin me. I'll lose everything. I pulled my hand back slowly and looked him dead in the eyes. You already did. When I walked away, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty, like someone had taken a shovel and dug me out from the inside. The next weeks blurred together. Lawyers, papers, whispers in the neighborhood. People looked at me differently, some with pity, some with curiosity. The woman who didn't know. I became a story people told over dinner. But I didn't care anymore. I was done being anyone's story but my own. I sold the house. The memories were too loud in there. Every corner carried echoes, his laughter in the kitchen, his voice in the hallway, his promises in the dark. I couldn't breathe in those walls anymore. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. No garden. No fancy kitchen. Just peace. But healing wasn't pretty. It came in waves: anger, grief, guilt, silence. Some nights I'd wake up crying, my heart pounding, reaching for a man who didn't exist. Other nights I'd stand in front of the mirror, trying to remember who I was before I became his wife. It was like meeting a stranger inside my own skin. One day I went to the grocery store and saw them, him, the other woman, and the kids. It felt like a punch in the stomach. They looked happy, normal, like a family. He didn't see me, but I stood there frozen, staring at the man who had once sworn forever to me, now holding someone else's hand like it was nothing. I should have hated him. I thought I did. But standing there I just felt sad. Not for him. For me. For all the years I spent loving a version of someone who never really existed. That night I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. Maybe closure isn't something you find in another person. Maybe it's something you create for yourself, one breath, one broken piece at a time. Months passed. The world slowly stopped spinning around my pain. I started painting again, something I'd given up when I got married. The first canvas I finished was messy, raw streaks of red and black, chaos and emotion. Called it rebirth. Then one morning I got an email. From her, the other woman. My hands trembled as I opened it. Kate, I found out about you. He finally told me everything. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I had, I would have never. I hope someday we both heal from what he did to us. I read it again and again. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me something I hadn't expected: peace. Because she was a victim too. We both were. We were two women who believed in the same man's lies. And somehow that realization made me feel less alone. Time has a strange way of softening even the sharpest edges. A year later I looked at myself in the mirror, the same face but different eyes. Stronger. Wiser. A little sadder maybe, but still standing. I wasn't the same woman who once believed love was everything. Now I knew better. Love isn't blind, people are. One evening I sat by my window with a cup of tea, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry, Kate. I'll never forgive myself. I hope you find happiness. E." I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. No reply. No tears. Just silence. Because some chapters don't need an ending. They just need closure. I took a deep breath and whispered to the fading light, "I already have." And for the first time in a long time I meant it.